Hello and welcome to the Simple Faith podcast, where we are exploring authentic Christianity for normal people. You might be asking, well, what does that mean? Well, it means this. We are trying to look at what our faith teaches us, what it means to be a follower of Jesus without all the churchy words, without all the kind of Christianese. We're just trying to talk about it like normal people, having normal conversations about vulnerable and tough things sometimes, but just seeing what the Bible teaches in a simple way, hence the Simple Faith podcast. Sharaya, we've made it through 38 consecutive episodes and finished 2020 with a bang.
Yeah, it's awesome. It feels like it's gone by so quickly, but yeah, it's cool to look back and see all the episodes that we've done, and I feel like I've learned a lot, so it's been great.
Yeah, the purpose of today's episode is really to do exactly what you just said, Sharaya, is to look back at all that we've been through in the last 38 episodes and to talk about what the future looks like for the Simple Faith podcast. So I have some cool stats. I like sharing stats, so I thought it would be nice to share some stats with you now, Sharaya. We have had listeners in 23 different countries. So Canada is one of them, obviously. 40% of our overall listeners are from Canada. In BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. We're still missing some of the other provinces, so we will have to work on that. Other countries include the United Kingdom, the United States, India, Belgium, United Arab Emirates, Albania, Ireland, Australia, Philippines, New Zealand, Netherlands, France, Costa Rica, Germany, Singapore, Ukraine, Brazil, Ethiopia, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, and Romania. So if you are in any of those countries listening to this podcast, thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, that is so cool. It's hard to wrap my brain around, but that's really cool.
Yeah, we so appreciate that. Our top 5 most popular episodes on this podcast are, understandably, the first episode. That was a really popular one. The second episode was, What is the Bible All About? That's our second most popular one. So it feels like maybe it's tailing off after people get the first 2, but you shouldn't, because there's other episodes that have been really popular too. Number 3 was, What is My Identity? Number 4 was the church and LGBT, the first part. And number 5 was, What is the Torah about? So those are our top 5 most popular episodes. I know that for us, some of the most positive feedback we got was from our LGBT series. And that's one that has been, we continue to get messages from people that have found that really helpful. I expected, if I'm honest, and Sharaya, I think you would agree with this, I expected that we would get absolutely torn to shreds for those episodes, but we just felt a real need that we had to stand up for what the Bible teaches and to look at what the Bible is calling us to. And the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, so we are so grateful for that.
Yeah, it was definitely an intimidating episode to do, or few episodes, but I'm really glad we did them, and it's been awesome to hear from so many people who've listened and just the encouragement and feedback from all of you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we've been through a whole bunch of topics. 37 episodes of topics and a year review is quite a lot. We've covered things like, what is the Bible about? What is the Torah about? What are the Old Testament historical books, Hebrew poetry, prophets, New Testament, and how to interpret the Bible. We've also done things like, what does the Bible say about finding your calling or identity, like we talked about, or swearing, tattoos, can I trust the Bible? Like we said, LGBT in the church, and performance culture, rules versus principles, being a New Testament church in the 21st century. We've talked about churchy words for normal people like discipleship and sovereignty and sanctification and various other things. We've talked denomination. We've talked about prayer. We've talked about tithing and communion and Bible school and missions. We've covered quite a lot. So Sharaya, I wonder, what have been some of your favorite things? What have you enjoyed learning about and talking about in this last year of podcasts?
I think our first few episodes were really good. It's always good to sort of get that big picture of the Bible and just revisit like how it all connects. And so I think that was a really good series to do, just as an overall reminder of just this incredible narrative and how it points us to Jesus. And so that was good. Another one that I really enjoyed was the identity one, our identity in Christ. And I feel like that's something that is close to my heart. So it was good to go through that and just be reminded of how much God loves us and how we are uniquely made and how we have so much purpose and we're loved by our God and by our Savior. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that those first episodes, the overview of the Bible, I think a year of preparation went into those because it was originally for a course, and those courses were intended to be 2 hours per session. And we got to condense a ton of information into those episodes. So that was really fun. Some of them, sometimes it's tough to prepare for a session, to prepare for a podcast episode while we're in the midst of busy weeks. You know, I don't know if you know this, but Sharaya and I are working at helping to kind of do this church plant type deal where we're helping to lead a church in Red Deer, Alberta. And sometimes it's really tough to balance preparing for a podcast with preaching or various other things. At one point, we were teaching devotionals during the week, plus a message on a Sunday, plus podcast stuff. And it felt like a lot. But one that I really enjoyed as a kind of a segue there is the dating apps and the church episode. I thought that was really fun because someone asked us if we could cover that. And we really love it when people ask us to cover topics. That's so fun because it meant that we had to look at things and study things and research in a way that, you know, is slightly different when you're covering stuff that you already had a fairly strong grasp, you know, obviously, of the things that we cover. We cover things that we're a bit more comfortable with often, unless we're bringing in guests. But yeah, I loved talking about dating apps in the church because, you know, I didn't experience dating apps. That wasn't my world. And I met Sharaya at Bible school. So it was a whole fun kind of foray into the world of dating apps that I had no idea about. But don't worry, I didn't use any, Sharaya. It was fine.
Yeah, I know.
By the way, Sharaya is my wife. If you're listening to this for the first time, I forgot to mention that Sharaya is my wife. It's kind of a big deal to mention that. Sharaya, what have you found the most enjoyable in general about doing this podcast so far?
Oh, the most enjoyable thing is hearing from people who have listened. Like, yeah, just I find it so intimidating to do these podcasts, to be honest. Like, even though it's just me and Dave and we're sitting in a room in our house and it's actually really quite relaxed. But in my head, I think of all the people who might be listening or what I'm saying. And I'm an overthinker. So I find these episodes sometimes really challenging to get through. But it's been so encouraging to hear from people who've listened and just, yeah, you have been such an encouragement. The people who have talked to us and yeah, just given your thoughts and lots of really good feedback. And yeah, that's been cool. That's been the most fun part, I think.
Yeah, obviously I would agree with that. You know, we love the feedback that we get from it. That's what kind of encourages us to keep going, really. But I think one of the other things I would add is just the process of making a podcast has been really enjoyable for me. Not always. Sometimes it's hard work. Sometimes Sharaya and I will get quite stressed and, you know, we'll have to come back the following day or something and tackle it because maybe we've not prepared enough and we've both been guilty of that, haven't we? And I think one of the things I've enjoyed is, you know, is like I say, is that process. So what does that look like for us? I mean, we've had a few people who have said, hey, what does it look like to make a podcast? How do you go about making a podcast? Well, we probably put on average, I don't know, an hour to 10 hours of preparation in terms of research and study before an episode. Sometimes we'll read entire books or a couple of books. Thankfully, we have a lot of notes saved from over the years of various studies. So that's really helpful. And then we will put together kind of a rough notey script. If it's something really a bit more intense, like the church and LGBT episodes were a bit more intense. So we scripted those a bit more carefully because we wanted to make sure that we addressed some of those topics in the right way. And that's hard. We want to make sure that we get it right. So we do that preparation and then we kind of figure out a rough script together and then we record. Recording can take anywhere from usually 45 minutes to about 2.5 hours, I think would be the longest. You know, we aim to try and make those episodes 30 minutes, but sometimes we go way over. And then the editing phase, that probably takes about 2 hours as well, because you have to listen through and remove a bunch of ums and ahs and stuff. And you would never even know that there's so many ums and ahs in our messages because we snip them out. So that's a good thing. But another thing for me, as someone who has grown up, you know, as a musician and spent most of my adult life as a music director and things like that, I want to make sure that the audio quality is as good as possible. And I'm probably a little bit too obsessed with trying to make it sound better. And, you know, my skill set is not where it should be to do that. So I often will tweak the sound and try and figure out ways to make it sound a little bit better each week. So if you listen to the first episode and compare it with now, it will be significantly better, and it's still significantly worse than I would like it to be, but we are working on it. So I really enjoy that process. I hope that's interesting for you. If you're listening and you're like, hey, I wanted to learn about Jesus, and you're just talking about making a podcast, I'm sorry about that. We generally do talk a lot about Jesus. Today, we're just talking a bit about our reflections, and that process is fun for me. For you might think, oh, I'd rather watch paint dry, but yeah.
Yeah, Dave does a very good job of the editing part and putting everything together, because I have no hand in that. He's the tech guy, so I appreciate that he has that skill set very much while doing these episodes.
Thank you very much. Sharaya, I wonder, what are some of the things that you haven't enjoyed so much about this podcast? What has been really hard? It's probably a better question. What has been really hard about this podcast?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me is kind of like what I mentioned before, is just feeling that sort of stress of trying to say the right thing. And that's kind of like exactly what we're not trying to do on this podcast. We want it to be simple. We want it to be authentic and genuine. I know for myself, sometimes I sort of overthink things and can get inside my own head. And that's where I've probably found the biggest challenge, is just, being really real and being really open and honest. Sometimes I feel like I need to say things in more words than I do. Maybe I'm doing that now. So that's probably the thing that I found hardest, is just I overthink probably what I say a lot more than I need to. But overall, it has been a really cool experience. And I feel like I said at the beginning, like I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to keep learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would echo that. I have learned so much from doing this podcast. There's things that, you think you know about, and then you study it in such a way as to try and share it with other people, and you learn so much. For me, I think the hardest thing, other than the time commitment, because obviously it's quite a big time commitment to do this, I would say one of the hardest things is consistently studying for these shows. It takes a lot of research and time. And like I say, some weeks is great because I've already done that research in the past, or we've already studied it and talked about it lots in the past. And sometimes it's something completely new, and you try and stay on top of things, and sometimes it's really hard. We had a really good season where I think we were about 3 weeks ahead with our podcast, as we were trying to get ready to go on vacation, so we didn't have to worry about recording podcasts on vacation, and that was really cool. But it's hard to stay on top of that when life gets in the way. So that's definitely been a real challenge. I think that's been one of the harder things. Also, keeping up with social media, because our podcasts go live on Sunday mornings, and I am desperately trying to get ready for this church plant situation, like I say, and there's lots of stuff to do. And I also have to think, I've got to post something on Instagram, and that can be a bit of a challenge at times. But we're working on it. Yeah, just promotion in general is hard. If you have some real experience of Instagram marketing, or just general marketing at all, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to get in touch and help give us some advice to get this podcast out there and reach more people. That'd be really helpful for us. Yeah, so maybe we should talk about what's happening next year and what this looks like now. We should probably talk about what has happened this year very quickly, which is that Sharaya and I started this podcast at the beginning of lockdown, and a few weeks into that lockdown, we found out that we were expecting a baby, which is awesome. So we've been basically running this podcast along the whole phase of our pregnancy. And Sharaya has been just an absolute champ in that pregnancy. There's been times where she had morning sickness and then would come in and then record the podcast straight after, because she is a hero of heroes. I don't know if I would be able to do that. But here's the thing. As of recording right now, we are 5 days away from the due date. In fact, when this podcast goes live, it will be the due date for baby Betts, which is a big deal. We have been trying to wrestle. If you've been following this podcast for a while, we've been trying to wrestle with what do we do during those first months of baby Betts, because that's hard. Sharaya's a champ, and she's been wrestling through morning sickness and doing all that stuff. But having a brand new baby, a couple of days old, and then doing a podcast is probably a bit much for both of us, especially for Sharaya.
Yeah, you might get a few incoherent podcasts from me if we do this in the next few weeks, I guess.
Yeah, so here's what we've decided we're going to do. We are calling today the season finale of our first season. So this is going to be season 1, and we're going to take approximately 3-month break, and we'll start again in April or so, maybe around Easter time. And we will then run the podcast again for season 2. Then we'll take a 3-month break again, run again for season 3, and so on. Maybe we'll make it to season 3. Maybe we'll make it to season 7. We just don't know. We're going to kind of just see where God takes us on that. But that's the plan. So this is our season finale of the Simple Faith podcast. And we will be gearing up for season 2 starting in April. And we hope that you will stay with us and that you won't get tired and move on to other podcasts and see other podcasts and all that stuff. we hope you'll stay simple faithful. Oh my word, so many puns.
Oh my.
If you're cringing, then don't worry, Sharaya is too.
Yeah.
But the exciting thing about that is that gives us time to focus on our child, which is kind of a big deal. Also, it gives us time to prepare for season 2, and we have a lot coming in 2021. We've revised our plan. You might remember from the very first episode, we had something like 167 episodes planned. What we didn't have planned was the order in which we were going to do them. Now we have a list of all the stuff that we're going to cover for the next 2 years, and we are very excited about that. So Sharaya, why don't I tell people a little bit about what's coming in 2021?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
We have a series talking about suffering, depression, and grief. Those are really important topics that we wanted to cover. And the reason we put it off from this year is because we really wanted to do it justice. So I've been reading up on that for the last year. Hopefully we'll be able to do that justice. We're looking at church history for normal people. Very excited about that. That will be about 6 weeks of blasting through the history of the church. How did the church come to be what it is today? We'll look at that. Does God heal today? And if he does heal, why doesn't he heal everyone? And probably the big question is, what happens when he doesn't heal? So we're going to talk about some of those things in a series on healing. We're going to talk about worship. We're going to dig deeper into the book of Revelation and 1 Peter. We're really excited about digging into the book of Revelation because that's a book that scares so many people, including me. And our aim is to spend a few episodes talking about it, to go into the kind of depth that you wouldn't necessarily get from a devotional series, but not as deep as you would get with a commentary. So trying to bridge that gap. And the same with 1 Peter. Over the next few years, we'll cover a few books of the Bible. But we're going to look at Revelation and 1 Peter for sure. Then we're going to talk about baptism and the ascension of Jesus, which is when he rose to go to be at the right hand of the Father. We're going to talk about creation and some different views on how the world came to be. And that's really exciting. We've got a special guest that we're very excited about, a PhD geologist who has some really fascinating insights that he's going to share with us. We're going to talk about social justice in the church, speaking in tongues, prophecy, why we should go to church, why we should plant churches, and which Bible translation should we read. So that's all coming in 2021, plus a few other things. That's not everything, but it's most of the things that we'll be covering. So we're pretty excited. Sharaya, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think I'm excited about this plan and where we're going. But again, if you guys have any suggestions or things that you would like us to cover, we would still love to hear that, because ultimately this is for our listeners and we want to cover topics that people are interested in. So just keep letting us know.
Yes. So that is the plan for the next year. We're really excited about it. We hope you can stick with us as we have this break, but we are so excited that 3 months not only gives us a chance, like I said, to take care of our baby, but also gives us an opportunity to study and prepare and hopefully serve you as well as we can as we talk about these very tricky things at times, but in a way that hopefully is simple and clear and concise. And yeah, we want it to be a blessing for you, and we want to learn as well. That's the journey that we're on. So with that in mind, Sharaya, I think we probably should call it there.
Yeah, I think we've kind of talked about, what we've done, where we're going, and yeah, just how grateful we are for you guys as listeners. It's really cool.
Yeah. So thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our little podcast called the Simple Faith Podcast. We are so grateful. To all 23 countries that we mentioned, thank you so much for paying attention to us, for listening to what we have to say, because ultimately we want to draw the attention away from us and send it towards Jesus. We want you to be looking at Jesus and growing in revelation and understanding and awe of who he is. If we've done that, then we've gone some way to fulfilling our purpose. We want to thank our guests. Thank you so much for each and every guest that has been on this show. We're excited about what you've brought, and we're excited about future guests as well. And finally, thank you, Sharaya, for all that you've done during pregnancy. You've brought so much, and I'm so grateful for that. I have a great wife, and it's a privilege to be able to serve alongside you. So thank you for that. And that's it from us. Merry Christmas. It's probably later than Christmas. I think we've passed Christmas. It's the 27th when this comes out. But we hope you've had a very, very Merry Christmas. Hope you have an incredibly happy New Year. And we will see you in April 2021.
Bye, guys.